So things kind of fell off going into GridLife Autocross Week, Proving Grounds Part 1, with videos up until my previous one just put up a couple days ago of King of the Mountain. And it's just been, haven't had a lot of time this summer to be doing any videos, even though I've been trying to take, you know, some video and stuff as I go, but it's hard when you're just not having time. But this video is going to be kind of get everything caught back up. Like I said, my last video, you know, chronologically this summer was back like first weekend in June or right at the end of May there. I posted a video and I was getting ready for the GridLife Midwest Fest, Autocross Week, and Proving Grounds. And kind of just left it at that video because, like, since then it's kind of been just a whirlwind busy of a summer with racing and breaking the car and fixing the car. So yeah, going into that string of events in June, I raced every single weekend in June, and the total was 11 days of racing car by the end of the month, because we had GridLife Midwest Fest to kick it off, went into Autocross Week, and then went back to Brainerd. And then the weekend after that, we had an autocross up at Black River Motorsports Park. The weekend after that, which was the final weekend of the month already, was at Autobahn Country Club with GridLife again. And, you know, just kept breaking the car as we went. I've had to fix it and just running short on time for a lot of that stuff. A great recap for Midwest Fest, Autocross Week, and going back to Brainerd would be through Brian. It'd be Greenlight Filming on YouTube. Put a picture here of that. If you go to his channel, he has 5 videos from that week. He did a far better job of doing videos and coverage of that stuff than I could possibly do, and it was just kind of such a whirlwind thing. You know, his along for the ride, had the camera out, and he did a great job. And he also, you know, had the time to go and talk to other participants and that kind of stuff to really make it work out really well for video. So really, you should go check out that stuff. I'll leave a link down in the description for each of those videos. Like, it's, if you want to watch the whole thing through, you're going to need, I think, like 2.5 hours to get through it, because he's got a lot of content there on that. One of the big things that happened was breaking the third link on the suspension, or on the axle side bracket. It kind of just fatigued and cracked after so much use this year. While we were at Midwest Fest, we were able to get it patched back together and through Autocross Week and at Brainerd. But ended up breaking an axle drive flange along the way too, which kind of took us out of Autocross Week. We were able to get some parts to patch it back together to get through Brainerd the following weekend. So that kind of worked out. I didn't have any problems for the Autocross the following weekend. But then we went back down to Autobahn, and I ended up breaking the third link again, or at least cracking it severely. It didn't totally break off again, but then we ended up borrowing a welder and doing some real shoddy welds, just adding bolts and crap to the side of the bracket to try to strengthen it up to keep going, which ended up all being for naught, because I think I got out the next session after that, and I made, I don't know, 2 or 3 laps, and then I completely blew third gear out of the transmission. It took all the teeth off of both gears, and that was kind of odd. I mean, I've been beating that hell out of that transmission for 5+ years now, so it's, I don't know. I mean, it's been a great transmission otherwise. It's just weird that I took that out. So after coming back home from Autobahn, we had a bit of a 3-week break before I had more events, but that time was spent trying to get parts for the transmission. I was able to get that repaired and put back together. It turned out that whatever specs I pulled up for assembly of the transmission had called for X amount of play and clearance on it. I'd previously been running it tighter than that, so I think maybe it was just a mistypo in whichever manual I happened to pull off the internet at that time. But I was able to tighten it back up, and the transmission's been good since. Once I had the transmission put back together, I redesigned my third link bracket a little bit. Yeah, basically it was kind of, I removed the lightning holes because I was trying to be clever and make a nice lightweight bracket the first time around, which I did. It's just ended up making it where it was a little bit weak in the spots. So just to further eliminate any problems and be absolutely sure from now on, I made the brackets thicker, removed the lightning holes, and then added a front side gusset as well to the bracket. So now it's, I mean, it's probably got 8 to 10 times more strength there than it did before, where in the weak spot where it had been cracking and breaking. Oh yeah, and while we were at GridLife, I also took out a fuel pump right away there, which we swapped, or had to go get spares, and I bought 2 of them. So that was a problem we had at Midwest Fest also. But I don't know, after getting the car back together, I kind of just had fun driving it around a little bit for a week or two. We did a car show locally here. We was in around the weekend after 4th of July. We went up to Little Fork, Minnesota, and did some mud racing for the first time. That was a lot of fun. The car I ended up driving up there was like a early 90s Corolla. Basically, I guess the rules were, you know, no 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, and DOT tire. Which DOT tire meant we took snow tires and then started cutting every other set of lugs out of it to make mud boggers out of them. That was a different experience there. I ended up having a lot of fun doing that. You know, I was a little not quick right off the bat, so I didn't make any of the heats and stuff. But I ended up getting to run 3 times. So it was a lot of fun, and in the last chance qualifier we went from having 6 cars at a time on track to like 20, and that was pretty fun, especially when you can start, you know, I started figuring it out and started cutting through the field pretty good and passing a lot of cars. That was a good time, and it was cool because we had kind of like 6 or 8 cars that were all part of the family that were all running, so we got to drive against each other a little bit and a bunch of other people, and I don't know, it was a real fun time. I had a blast, and then brother's girlfriend ended up driving the Corolla there at the end during the Powder Puff race, and she took 3rd with it, which is pretty awesome. So despite it being the last car picked and the one I was stuck with because I showed up late, it was actually the car that survived to the end. After that, we had another Autocross to do, some just kind of test and tune with the car a little bit. I didn't do a whole lot of test and tune. Mostly I was just go up, have fun for the day at Black River Motorsports Park. It was the 2nd time I took FTD this year up there, and it was fun because we had pretty good amount of competition show up for that, so that was pretty awesome. And then went to Road America with GridLife as a sports series for NASCAR weekend. I was really looking forward to that event. One of the big things I needed to get done before going to Road America for that event was I wanted to try out the new to me anyway, enclosed trailer that picked up this year. It's as old as I am. It's a 1989, but it needs some love. And it's big, it's black. There's no way in heck I was taking it anywhere without air conditioning in it in the middle of summer, especially in end of July. So ended up having to do some fixing up on that stuff. Like I painted the roof white, put air conditioning in it, had to fix some of the sketchy wiring in it. Yeah, it was just, wow, the wiring was sketchy in that thing, and had to just like try. I've been slowly fixing. I still need to rewire the whole trailer for the lights and brakes and all that stuff because it's still causing problems, and whoever rewired it before used different size wires and crossing colors, and there's a house electrical box on it with freaking wire nuts on everything. It's a mess and it needs fixing, so I'm doing a little bit each time I have time to do that. Anyway, get out to Road America there, it was nice to finally be back after nearly 2 years. And still didn't have time to get the aero fixed after damaging it at Watkins Glen. But I was able to go out and beat my previous best by, I think, almost a second right off the bat. More horsepower helps a lot, especially at Road America. And then just having, a whole lot better suspension setup than I did previously. And surprisingly enough, I was able to drive the car basically like the best I could have driven it right off the bat. And then later that day I did it again, and my optimal time that the Garmin Catalyst was saying was only like 100th faster than what I actually drove the car at. So like, oh, alright, cool. Like, I feel like I was getting close to the full potential out of it, but I mean, I still had a long ways to go, because by the end of the weekend I picked up several more seconds, and it was just a matter of, well, I mean, the Catalyst hadn't seen that car do any better at Road America before, so I was just driving it better each time, and that's why I kept getting quicker and quicker. But it was not without problems. I had I think Thursday, took out another fuel pump almost right away. It was acting like it was fuel starving after a few laps on track, which didn't make any sense because I still had well over half a tank in it. And then got back to the pits, and then like I keyed on to move the car again a little bit, and I could just hear it screeching and grinding back there, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, fuel pump's gone again. So put another one of those on, began to really think about why the heck I've been through 2 fuel pumps this year, because normally they'll last 2 years minimum. And I think it's just due to the fact that with the 3-link setup I can't run the exhaust past the rear end because of all the extra brackets and arms and stuff going on. So I just been ending the mufflers basically like the rear glass area right ahead of the rear tires. Well, I think what's happening is building up way too much heat underneath the car, and I was cooking the fuel pump and the fuel lines and the fuel tank. And this is not an unknown problem either, because even several years back, like, I had to add heat shielding and all kinds of stuff to the tailpipes and the fuel tank and everything, the couple of times I've been out to Colorado, because the air's so much thinner and it doesn't cool as well. And it's been a struggle to kind of maintain heat. So really the whole exhaust needs to be redesigned. I have an idea where I'd really like to dump it out of the quarters ahead of the rear tires. But that's going to require cutting up the floor in the back, used to be back seat area, and like getting the pipes up and over the frame rails in order to do that, because I really don't want to notch out the frame to get it to dump, and I don't want to be losing a ton of ground clearance either by running the pipe underneath the frame. So I'd rather go up and over and maintain ground clearance, and potentially if we can make the car lower in the future, awesome, and still not have problems. And so it was a bit of an eye-opener, or finally a eureka moment, to figure out why I've been having these consistent problems, especially this year. And after fixing that, I ran great. Final session on Thursday, had a good time. Went into Friday and I made 2 sessions on Friday, and then I came in because I got flagged for smoke, and here it was, it had filled up the catch can on the dry sump, and it kind of pushed out just enough to kind of spray around. And it was good that I pulled in right away, because otherwise it was oiling down the passenger front tire. But then after I came in to get checked, and it was like not leaking, and then they walk around the car and come back and tell me it's not leaking, and they look again, and then it was leaking. It was just kind of like, alright, well, whatever. Well, then I go to pull off a track, and I can't get it back in gear. And I had to shut the car off, put it in gear, start it, and then I couldn't really disengage the clutch all that well either. So I was like, well, what the heck happened here now? And I was thinking, well, maybe the throwout bearing seized up, or this, that, whatever. And we start checking things, and I ended up going to town, getting a throwout bearing, coming back, pulling the transmission at the track, only to have the throwout bearing be perfectly fine. And at that point, I was really kind of stumped and just worried that it was something in the clutch, which of course it was. After looking at it for a few minutes, I realized that, oh, well, these don't look right. And of course, I didn't have anything to properly unhook and line the clutch back up. All the alignment tools and stuff were at home. The special sockets I need for some of the stuff was here. And I don't know, I just kind of started just, you know what, whatever, I'm going to take it apart. I had some friends go and borrow some tools from somebody that had one, the socket that would work. And I took it apart, and here 2 of the rivets that hold the floater plate, because I have a twin disc clutch, had sheared off and dropped. And pretty sure one of them was gone before we went to GridLife Midwest Fest back in June. And it was broken all through Autocross week and all that racing I did in June, because it was being kind of a pain in the butt to put it in reverse or first gear a lot of the time. And then after I somehow had some bolts in my everything bin that had a shoulder on them that was the exact right size I needed, I was able to bolt it back together, kind of grind it flat, peen the threads a little bit so it wouldn't come apart. And like took a socket and an extension and taped up till it fit the splines of the clutch and fit in the crankshaft, and kind of made a half-assed alignment tool. And we had to fight with it for a while. Like I had another buddy there help out, and he just kind of more or less kind of, when I needed help with repositioning the transmission or something a little bit, we were able to go around. And finally I got the transmission put back on, and we were able to go out and make laps Saturday morning, which went well. In fact, the car was running so well that even after I knew the tires were done, after 2 hot laps, I just wanted to keep driving. Like, it was just wonderful. I don't know what it was about Road America in a sunny morning. You know, you got shade on the track in places, especially between, you know, down into 5 and then down through the kink into Canada. It was blissful. Some of the best driving feelings I've ever had. And I just didn't want to get off track. I just wanted to keep turning laps. Well, that was great until about, let's see, lap 7. At which point, the car immediately went into a misfire exiting turn 14. And I thought maybe I just melted a spark plug wire or something. Like, it's happened before where one, you know, I think it's up out of the way and then it just vibrates and falls down and gets melted. But I thought I had taken care of that, but it's like, well, I don't know, it seemed like it was a misfire from, you know, loss of spark or something. So I drove the thing from turn 14 all the way back around to 5 to exit properly instead of just diving off, because I had just been doing 7 hot laps steady. Like, the brakes needed a cool down, and, you know, it needed just a cool down lap was better than nothing. And by the time I started trying to get it back to my pit coming off the track at 5, it was barely running. It was not having it. And got it back to my pit, started trying to diagnose it and do this and that, whatever. Pulled the valve covers off. Like, I thought maybe the rocker arms were a little bit loose, which they were. But there's just nothing made sense about why it was misfiring so bad. And we couldn't get it fixed before the next session, which was the last session of the weekend. So it's just like, whatever. And I actually ended up starting the car back up, moving it over to park it on the front row for, like, you know, all the people walking by and coming to the track for the NASCAR race later in the day. So it was like right there where it could be seen and stuff. And then Sunday morning, fired it up from there, drove it into the trailer, got home, unloaded it, drove it in the shop here, and proceeded to rip it apart. Things went sideways when number 5 had no compression. And it was coming out the intake. I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. And then I pulled the intake off and went and pulled the cylinder head off, and I rolled it over, and oh shit. Half an intake valve was missing. How on earth that thing didn't fall in the cylinder and kablooey the whole engine all over the racetrack at turn 14, I don't know. But it had a couple of dings, as you can see in the chamber. The piston had a couple of dings in it, and the rest of the chunk of the intake valve ended up stuck in the intake manifold that I didn't even have it fall out of the intake, even though I looked in the intake until I was almost ready to put it back together, which was shocking. But then, yeah, you could see that it traveled over into the intake bowl behind number 1 and beat up the bowl and the back of the valve over there. And I got so lucky it didn't fall in the cylinder. So this turns into, well, I got, another Autocross and King of the Mountain coming up in like 2 weeks. Right, I actually had Autocross coming up 2 weeks from that. And then a following Autocross weekend, and then going to King of the Mountain. And it was just like, well, I have the backup engine. I mean, can I even find parts to try to fix this one? Well, I start shopping around and looking, and by the end of the day, I had pretty much decided that, okay, I can get, some springs, retainers, locks. Like, I didn't trust any of the valve train anymore. So like I needed all new of that. I needed new poly locks, because those were all beat up from the rocker arms. And I wasn't going to trust any valve. I could have bought one valve and put in it. There's no way in heck I was doing that. I didn't trust any of it. I'm pretty sure what happened was we lost control of the valve train, and it was just floating and ended up kind of beating and smashing itself to pieces, and eventually fatigued and cracked that valve and broke. But I was able to find a set of valves that added a little bit of installed height, or at least I hoped they were gonna, and just kind of went with it because I really had no other options, especially nothing that was going to happen quickly without, because otherwise all my other valve options were custom valves. And we're talking weeks out on that kind of stuff. So I ordered what I could, ditched the springs that I had, definitely went 100 pounds stiffer on the seat and about 120 pounds more on the open pressures. It isn't just a hydraulic roller profile I'm running, but I am running solid roller lifters, so the pressure's not an issue. And I'm not even sure what brand the previous springs were. Yeah, I don't remember what the heck they were. I just don't remember what box they came in. I don't know. They were recommended by another engine builder. They were fine for what it was, but apparently leaving it in 4th gear because it's faster at Road America and letting that thing sing out near 7,000 RPM for a duration, let's say, several times a lap, it wasn't up to snuff with the spring pressure. So I got some pack springs, and all new retainers, locks, the whole 9 yards there. Able to get it put back together, and let's see, I put it together, and I think I had it fired up Thursday night, and Friday I left to go up north, and then Saturday I was autocrossing with it. So the car was only down like basically a week and a half, 2 weeks tops. And then I had to retune the suspension because now it made more power in the mid-range, because I did go with a little bit bigger valve because that was just how it worked out for the options I was at. Pretty sure it makes more power in the mid-range. Had to retune the suspension a little bit for that. Was able to go back the following weekend. I finally got my aero fixed. Swapped over to a fresh set of tires, and and then I had to change the power steering pulley drive on the mandrel. Well, I was going to change it anyway, and then while I was taking it apart to change it, I realized that, I didn't have enough press fit for the bolt holding all of the gears in place, so they were rattling back and forth on the keyway, and had beaten up the mandrel and the pulley, and I got lucky there too. It could have been a real mess and something that certainly wasn't going to get fixed in a hurry. I was able to live it through the first weekend, autocrossing, and then I was able to get it repaired for the following weekend. I was up at Black River Motorsports Park again. And man, I was able to keep power steering assist in slower speed corners. It was wonderful. It made it so much easier to drive, especially in slow speed corners. I don't notice much difference, and it should be geared where I don't have to worry about it on the big track either. So I should be able to leave that gear on, and it'll be good. Now, I felt like I was, at that point, about as ready as I could be to go into King of the Mountain, which is where we pick up on the previous video to this, but the one later chronologically.